in flesh. If you're going to go around reading books about this topic, some of these terms you'll need to know. God the Son comes down as Jesus Christ, lives the perfect life in submission and complete compliance with all of the laws that we are supposed to follow that we can't follow because we're not perfect. Loves God perfectly, loves people perfectly, his entire life. Then he dies. Remember that death is the just punishment for sin. And since Jesus had no sin, the fact that he died may be the only injustice in human history. But it's necessary, because the death of Christ is our death. If you're a Christian, the death Jesus died is credited to you. The theological word, like the fancy word for this is propitiation. The reason that Jesus died was so that he could pay God the penalty for our sin. I've heard some people say that Jesus died to pay Satan for us. No. Satan's not in charge. God is in charge. If Jesus paid anybody, he paid God the Father. So when we say, when we ask, have you accepted Christ as your Savior? Or I have accepted Christ as my Savior, what we're really saying is that we have gratefully accepted the death of Christ as our propitiation and our substitute for our death. When we say Jesus died for us or Jesus died for our sin, what we really mean is that Jesus died in our place or instead of us. Jesus died so that I don't have to. That's when we move from being under God's justice to being under God's grace. So to say life isn't fair, you're absolutely right. You are completely 100% right. Life is not fair. Fairness. Fairness is being under justice. That's fair. Fairness is paying your own price. Fairness is dying your own death. We have grace. That's not fair at all. That's not just at all. But guess what? If you want fairness, you can have it. It's yours. I'm gonna stick with grace. So before we get into the take-home for this week, which I'm really, really stoked about, I'm going to share something that came out of last week's sermon. I was in the food court after the service, and this is awesome. I saw someone from the church. I'm not going to say who because they asked me not to. I saw someone in the church tip $5 for their meal to someone in the food court. Floored me. I mean, if you hear last week I was talking about tipping and being a good tipper because Sunday crowds, like church crowds, are notoriously the worst tippers in history. And I said, be a good tipper or go home for lunch. When I said that, I was talking about like sit-down restaurants where the minimum wage is lower and waitresses depend on that kind of thing. I wasn't talking about food courts where they make the same minimum. So I thought, I saw this and I thought, this is a phenomenal and a simple example, an outpouring of giving grace to someone else. And I want to share it with you because that's the kind of thing that we love to do. That's the only story I heard all week, and I'm sure there's more. If you got them, call us, email us, call Melissa at the office. We love to hear this. As a church family, we love to celebrate with you. This is what being a Christian is all about. It's not about coming on a Sunday. It's about living it out the other 6 days of the week. So please let us know so we can celebrate with you and pray with you and just love it. It's great. Small group leaders, no pressure. So for this week, I got a couple more things as a take-home for you on top of being a Christian and not being a jerk about it, which I also mentioned last week. I'm going to start with this one again. If you are not a Christian, guess what? It's time to stop living under justice. Grace is there. You do not need to die your own death. You do not need to think that you can be good enough to satisfy God's justice, because guess what? You can't. Accept that Jesus paid your penalty so that you can live under grace. At River City, we love you. We don't just say that, we really do. We want to see you living under grace. So if you're a new Christian, or you want to be a new Christian, you don't know how, let someone on staff know. Let me know, let Melissa know, one of the hosts, your small group leader, if you're in a small group, tell them. We're a community, we're a family. We want you to be a part of it, but you can't unless you tell us. I know I mentioned this last week, the whole become a Christian thing. Guess what? I'm going to mention this every week that I'm up here. Christianity is a one-trick pony. That's what the whole Bible is about. The whole Bible is about Jesus. You know, it's 66 books, it's one story. That's why we preach it, because we love you. We don't want you to live under justice. You don't need to. We want you to be under grace. Second part, if you are a Christian, if you're a part of this church specifically, then this is where we get back into social justice a bit. Give. Give your time, give your money, give your talents, inside the church, outside the church, whatever that looks like. I'm not here to guilt you into increasing your tithing, although that's how we worship. Give to another organization. World Vision's a good one. Serve in a food bank. Whatever it looks like to you. If you're a Christian, we have been given grace, so as Christians we are called to give grace. Give grace to others, to the disenfranchised, to the poor, to the sick, to the needy, because that's what Jesus did. Speaking of grace, give that too. One of the last things that Jesus told his followers after the resurrection was to go out and to spread the good news of the gospel and the good news of his resurrection. To tell about that shift from living under justice to living under grace. To let people know that that door has been opened, that we can follow Christ and live under grace. And that command has remained to this day. It sticks around. We don't do it because we have to. I don't come up here, whenever Daryl asks me to cover for him, I don't come up here and do this because I have to. I don't spend all week pouring my heart and soul into this talk that I get because I have to. I do it because people are living under justice and they don't need to. And we love them, and I love them, and I love God, and I love people. And like I said last week, there's a lot of people that I know that are living under justice, and heaven's going to be really hard to enjoy without them. So I want them to come too. I want you to come too. That's why we spread the gospel. I've been agonizing all week about this one little thing that I was going to mention it, then I wasn't going to mention it, then I was going to mention it, then I finished my sermon and I emailed it, and then I wasn't going to mention it, so it's not in the final draft. Guys, sorry, surprise. Even this morning, while we're singing the thing, I'm like, no, I'm not going to bring it up. Now that I mentioned it, I guess I have to. When we talk about spreading the gospel, when we talk about the shift between grace to justice, and when we talk about how we do that as Christians, there's a good way to do it and there's a bad way to do it. And I was confronted this week with one of the bad ways to do it. A lot of you guys know I work at Starbucks. If you don't know, you should come and hang out with me. This is fun. My buddy who works with me was in drive-thru, and I hope you're not from this church. If you are, we'll talk. They came through the drive-thru and they handed my buddy this card. It was the day after St. Patrick's Day, and they gave it to him and said, "Are you lucky? Put your thumb on the little 4-leaf clover thing for 8 seconds, and if it turns gold, you're lucky." Of course, it's not a color change card, so you put your thumb there and you count, and there's nothing. Like, it's still a green 4-leaf clover. Then you turn the card over, and does anybody know what a gospel tract is? If you're familiar with that term at all? Okay. It's basically when you lay out the gospel in a little format, a little quick format, and you tell people, now be a Christian, and go to this website so you can learn. That is not what spreading the gospel is. I'm not saying that there's never an opportunity when that's the appropriate thing to do, but handing this thing through a drive-thru window to a person you've never seen before or met before is not the way to do it.